Our podcast series, Welcome to the Future, starts now.
What's up, everybody? We're back. Welcome to season 2 of Welcome to the Future podcast. We are here live on site at our headquarters here in Las Vegas. And I have a special guest today. We had a special opportunity to meet this young lady at our Cannabis Leadership Awards this summer here at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. She was one of our honorees for her leadership, her advocacy in the community, representing her native people, as well as her influence in the cannabis world and her efforts in advancing outdoor growing. She's a special gem here. One of our staffers, Mr. Kyle Stevens, he came across her, I think, at the after party in Eugenio Suite. Shout out to Cannabis Now. We appreciate it. And we were already thinking about it when you were on stage. We were like, we would love to kind of get her and have her come by the office and chat with her and learn more. And then once he shared that he had connected with you, it was just like an instant, like, okay, let's get going. Let's get on the phone. Let's get chatting. But just wanted to thank you for being here and welcome. How are you? Everything's good?
I'm doing really well. And
really
thank
good.
you for having me.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We thank you. A lot of people have been coming in the heat. You know, you're coming in like the peel off of the summer, so it's a little bit cool. But we appreciate you for taking the time, flying in. I know it's pretty crazy getting here, right?
Yeah, it was for sure. I
What
missed my flight.
What they do to you? What happened here? Let's let the viewers know.
I missed my flight at SFO.
Okay.
Expedia had Terminal 3 on my itinerary, but it was actually international. So I showed up an hour early thinking, okay, I'm going to be fine. You know, I have an hour. I was not fine. It was one of those times where it's so embarrassing. I was that person running.
Really?
Running.
Only for you not to make it and you get there.
Through 1 to 12, I had to get to 12, that's international. And I had to get there and I had to get here and do this podcast. And I had to be on that flight,
Right,
and I literally, I thought about it and I was like, I'm going to do it. Am I or not? And I was like, I'm going to do it. And I just ran through the airport.
People are looking at you like, that's that one lady that's probably going to miss her flight.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the weird part was no one was really like looking at me crazy. They're just like, oh yeah, no, you get it. Go,
It's her today. It'll be us tomorrow.
Exactly. Happens all the time,
Yeah.
So, but yeah. And then I took an early flight and made it in. There was like, a crazy storm, lightning as we were coming in. Crazy downpour and everything, but I'm here.
Yes.
And
you made it safely. In one piece. Your luggage is with you.
Yeah.
All of your items, nothing got left, which she did bring us some goodies that we'll get into later on in the day. So before we get into that, I want to get into your bio really quick. Shout out to Mrs. Hannah Scott of our production crew who had a great bio on Lindsey, and I just want to share some of it. It says, Lindsey Renner is the founder of Native Humboldt Farms. She is a Native American woman from the Wailaki tribe. The Wailaki were native to Humboldt County before a white incursion when they were enslaved and eventually pushed to a reservation in the neighboring county. The land that holds Native Humboldt Farms was a recreational site for the Wailaki tribe up until the 1860s, and it belonged to Lindsey's great-great-great-grandmother, Chowrow, after the white incursion. Did I say that right?
Chowrow.
Chowrow. Sorry, guys, make sure I get that right. Chowrow, after the white incursion. Lindsey managed to get this historic piece of property back into her possession 15 years ago, and she has been cultivating cannabis here ever since. In the fall, after the full season crops, she unearths the roots of her cannabis plants, sits under the oaks, and weaves baskets. It is safe to say that Native Humboldt Farms is on sacred land, and Lindsey prays that she is making her ancestors proud. And I can say a little bit just from what I've learned about this young lady from last month at the Cannabis Leadership Awards and then the brief chat that we've done today before we got started. I can definitely say that she's making her people proud because I've learned some great things about her, and we're proud to learn more today. So thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So let's actually get started with your origin and introduction to cannabis. Where did you begin?
So I've been growing outdoor sun-grown in Humboldt County, southern eastern Humboldt, for 15 years. With my partner, John, and our children, it was really like a lifestyle. We weren't branding or anything like that. Right. And we worked in the under the 215 era, and we worked with, collectives and patients, and we didn't really grow a lot. We grew just a little bit, and it was very sustainable, just so that we could kind of maintain and stay in Humboldt and, stay on the land. It was about 8 years of that, I was not the main cultivator, actually.
Okay.
So I was pretty much a stay-at-home mom. I definitely helped. So I would water, I would help top dress, I would, I would help plant sometimes, but John was definitely the main cultivator, and I was kind of like maybe like the little apprentice or just literally like an assistant or something like that, helping out when he needed it. I wasn't like super into, I was watching what he was doing with the compost teas and kind of like I knew what the NPK ratio was and everything like that, but it wasn't my responsibility, my responsibility was the kids really. And so I didn't totally get into it. But then I did actually after we had a total loss house fire. So 2015, we'd been cultivating on the property for, about 8 years. And it's about an hour from town. So an hour from any fire station, fire department, anything like that. Our neighbor's house caught on fire. And it was relatively close to ours. And by the time a fire truck got there, ours, it took about 15 minutes for ours to catch. And our house was actually built like in the late 1800s. It was just this tender bundle, this just old hardwood floors, like ranch house. And so once it hit, it took about 4 minutes for it to roll through. You literally watched it like a wave of fire. Like it just hit the side. And I was home alone, actually. And my oldest daughter went out to get firewood. I was actually trimming because that year we would just kind of trim our own weed. We didn't grow that much. So we'd take the entire year. We'd sell it the next year. And she went out to get firewood and said that the neighbor's house was on fire. So luckily she did that because it took 4 minutes to
that's as quick
hit
as it
the
was.
side and a wave, of fire rolled through the house and shot flames out the other side. So, we would have died if it would have happened like at night or anything like that. But after the fire, we lost everything, and it's, we lost everything in the safes. We lost our whole crop from the previous year, actually. Like we were trimming it. We usually saved it till the next year to sell it. So we lost all of that. We did have insurance though. And so we, moved the kids to a house in town. So in Benbow.
Yeah.
And John was just devastated. And I can't really explain it, but I can kind of explain it. You lose everything you've ever worked for, and like I said, at that point in time, I'm kind of like a stay-at-home mom. He's providing, this is the life that he had built for our family, and it was taken away in seconds, and it just crushed him. And I think after a fire, it's kind of like, it's really like survival mode. There's no handbook. You don't really know how you're going to respond. And for me, it was one foot in front of the other. And for John and I, we didn't really talk about it. It was just like, we're just acting, right? We're just in action, taking steps. And we saved 2,500 sour diesel clones. So
I wasn't completely lost. It was a total loss for the most part.
Total loss, but we saved some cannabis. Exactly. So we were able to save some plants, and actually a lot of it burned. We took a bunch of clones that year. We lost some of them. The neighbors actually helped us move out 2,500 sour diesel clones. And it's a cut that John's had since 1999. Yeah, and it's still as vigorous and healthy. And so anyways, I just started commuting out there. I had a friend that had a grow store, and she actually, cuffed me soil for the year. And so 2015, I started commuting, and I grew 9,800 square feet of canopy. Yeah. And that was actually the year that we had to prove existing with the county. If they just started to roll out their regulatory structure, and 2015 we had to prove existing. And honestly, before 2015, we grew a very small, amount of canopy, and so I wouldn't have even been able to permit probably. Yeah, and so that's when Native Humboldt Farms started, really, was when I was myself, because it was just me,
Right.
going out there and working with the cannabis. And yeah, clearly the name came very easy. You know, my tribe was native to Humboldt before being pushed out to Mendocino. And then, yeah, I totally fell in love with, I mean, Native Humboldt was born, I think, because, and it's still here now, because I fell in love with cannabis. Like, cannabis has been such a big part of my life for forever. I mean, I started selling large amounts of cannabis when I was 15 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
It's been around a while.
Yeah.
What was the thing that made you fall in love with cannabis? Was there one particular thing, or were there a few things that you were like, that's my thing?
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
Yeah, it was one thing for me, actually. You know, as I was cultivating this plant alone for a few seasons, you know, out on the property, I realized how they reciprocate energy, right? So I feel like in my life, I've put a lot of effort and energy out, you know, and I to help people or to love people, and I haven't really gotten it back.
Right.
And it was like a sad thing in my life for a long time. I was like, man, life is rough. You
Right,
know,
yeah,
some
yeah.
people are, you know, suck
Yeah,
and
for
are
sure.
difficult, you
Yeah.
know? And I remember the second season I was out there and I was doing a foliar spray of kelp. And when you do it, you can see the plants respond immediately to it. And so, you know, you're spraying it and they immediately start to perk up and lift their leaves up. And they were like saying, thank you, you know? And it was like, wow, the amount of whatever amount of energy I choose to put into my cannabis, it gives it back to me, either through, you know, teaching me or just in production or, you know, the quality, whatever I put in, I get back. And if I don't put it in, I don't get it back,
yeah.
you know? And I love that with cannabis.
It's funny you say that. On one of our earlier episodes of season 1, we had Green Bodie on, and he talked about a lot of his methodologies. I refer to that episode a lot because it was packed with a lot. It was called Growing Wisdom, and he spoke about being one with the plant and how the time that you put into it and learn the plant, it'll tell you what it wants. It'll tell you what it needs, what it doesn't need, how it's feeling that day. And then that's how you base your process and your methods on caring for it. That's how you do it. And each plant is different.
Yeah.
But he was just saying that being one with self allows you to be one with the plant. So that it's just like you said, you get the time back, you get the love back. You know, they say good morning to you when you wake. It's a beautiful process to be a part of that part of the cannabis, that you see that intimate piece.
It is. And, you know, the other thing and the reason why I love it is because not only does it communicate what it needs and show us who it is, it teaches you who you are. Yeah. Like the more you work with the plant in a, you know, with intention, the more you learn about yourself. It's almost like I always say, I'm not really cultivating cannabis. You know, it's more like cannabis is cultivating me. Right. You know, I've learned so much about myself. And it's like, you know, and it is kind of something that you can't explain. I always tell people to grow their own. Yeah. And, you know, if you can grow 6 plants or if your state allows you to do it, because it's not something you can really explain. But yeah, I can walk by them and I know more about myself. You know, I can be with them over the season and, you know, and maybe it's just all the time you're spending, you know, with yourself and the plants. But, you know, you really grow. I feel like cannabis is a teacher. And I really do feel like I can walk by my plants and know what they need. Like, and it's literally like an energy. It really is.
What was your introduction to the healing properties of it? Like, obviously a lot of people refer to it as medicine. Yeah. What was your introduction to the medicine side of it? So we got cultivation and where you started there, but where did it transition to the medicine and seeing the influence that it had on people, positively, of course?
So basically, when we were working under 215, you know, we were working with patients and some of them specifically had cerebral palsy. And we would have them up to the farm and they would actually come up and trim their own medicine, take it home with them. And you know, you can really see, you know, when they came, they would, you know, not be able to put sentences together. They're kind of stuttering. It's difficult for them to walk. And as soon as they smoke, their bodies, their nervous system really does calm down, and they're able to talk to you. And you could see the relief, I mean, you could really see it in the frustration when they couldn't talk to you, and they just showed up at your house, and them, and then the relief after smoking, and then the visible, healing properties, just right there. So, I mean, I definitely think it's medicinal, certainly. Sure. Yeah.
So that's the beautiful introduction of it too, because obviously you grow outdoors, so you have a connection with the plant, but then you have a connection with it through your ancestral land. You have a connection through it through the medicinal side, obviously, as you said, with assisting those with cerebral palsy. But let's talk about your native days and your ancestral land. How did this entire process come to be? I know it was a magical discovery, but how did this process of native Humboldt farms, you cultivating on your ancestral land, and this beautiful storm happening?
Right. Yeah. So I have a pretty crazy story.
Yeah.
And most of the time when I tell it, it seems unbelievable to me, and that's a really cool thing, because I think that, I do look at it and think like, man, I have to be here for a reason. Right. Yeah. Like, I'm supposed to be in cannabis for a reason, for sure. But so I didn't grow up with my biological father. He's Native American. And he's Wailaki. So when I was born in 1982, there was a custody battle between my mom and my dad and my grandparents were cannabis farmers. So at that point in time, they weren't able to just go and fight for me in court. And, I mean, clearly, how do you make that decision? But it's like, it was what they did, and actually my mom's family is pretty prominent, and it was just a battle that they couldn't win. So I grew up without him completely.
Okay.
I actually I was on this property in southern eastern Humboldt, where Native Humboldt Farms is, for 3 years before I reached out to him. I had never talked to him. I had talked to my grandparents once when I was 21, but I had never talked to my biological father. And I was on Native Humboldt Farms for 3 years.
I had no idea. I mean, obviously there was no conversation, but that never even crossed your mind.
No, not at all.
Did you have any clue that obviously, did you know that the area was still native to your tribe and your people? But how did that?
Not my tribe. No, really? I did not.
No, so you didn't even know that either?
No, I did not at all.
What
we did know was, all throughout Blocksburg, there's, arrowhead chips and pieces kind of remnants of the past, that was there. So we did know that for sure. But no, I did not know that it was my tribe.
I thought you had an idea, at least, like obviously growing up with cannabis or having some...
No, and honestly, Native American history and culture, even within our families, aren't really talked about a lot, and that's probably because it's very traumatic, and but definitely something that we need to talk about. Sure. But so I actually I got a hold of my biological father. He told me that he talked to my grandmother. They said, we've been following you kind of, we know exactly where you are. And this is the crazy part. And I mean, this is like, I must be here in cannabis for a reason. So they said, walk down to the bottom of the property, and you walk up on this hill. You literally wouldn't even know it's there. And they said there's a little, white, picket fence around a gravestone from 1861, and it's your great-great-great-grandmother's daughter who passed away when she was 2, and they donated that part of their land because they owned all of the land right there, even around the land that I own now. And they donated that part for the cemetery in 1861. So I walked down. And I walked up the hill, and I found it. And Cannabis Business Times actually has a picture of it in their in their article that they did. And And yeah, that was the land. So I started doing research, and I started reaching out to, people that knew about, the history of my tribe. And then I actually, on Ancestry.com, was able to follow it back to like the 1700s. And in that, I found that my great aunt, actually, when she was 95, she started doing a bunch of interviews with UC Berkeley and Humboldt State. And so I was able to, kind of get that information and kind of track it back and see, kind of put the pieces together. And honestly, it's a little bit difficult. People on the reservation, even some of my cousins and things, it's kind of news to them as well when we track it back and we're like, okay, this is where it was. During white incursion in the 1860s, 10 miles, my tribe was actually taken 10 miles east of my farm. And then the women and children were separated from the men, and probably 95% of the men were killed. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a traumatic situation. So not a lot of people talk about it. But, Lucy, before she died, she's quoted and she says, I have to say it now because it's the truth, and because it's the truth, you need to hear it. And, so I'm actually going to people in my family on the reservation now and just talking about it with them so that, people can process and we can kind of start processing it. But yeah.
So you were the first one of your family to come to knowing that. No one else in your family knew that.
No, my grandma did.
Your grandma. Okay.
Yeah. So my grandma's the one that told me.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a moment of feeling home, like finally that home at last, like, okay, I finally feel like I know where I belong. Now the work begins. Like,
yeah, I think when I first realized it, because it was 2011, I didn't understand, what it meant. I didn't even really see how big of a deal that it was. And then it wasn't until I started cultivating cannabis. When I started cultivating cannabis, it was like everything just made sense. When I was out there by myself with the plants throughout the seasons, I realized I became connected to the land. I reconnected with my ancestral DNA, but it wasn't until cannabis. Cannabis was really the vessel. And yeah.
Cannabis is what made it all.
Yeah,
that's what made it click. Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk perseverance because obviously that takes a little bit of fighting through to reach out to your dad that you didn't have a relationship with, then get the information, then take it upon yourself to go and discover what was literally right in front of you, right?
Yeah.
Like, what was that how much, I don't want to say how much perseverance, but like, what was it, what clicked in you? And how did that influence those around you to persevere, to kind of navigate through that, to get to where we are here? How has that impacted those around you?
How has perseverance impacted
your perseverance
people
to you navigating through your journey of starting in cannabis, then finding your land, your native land, and then native Humboldt farms? Like, how has perseverance guided you through that journey, I should say, and its influence?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's perseverance, but it's kind of cannabis, I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
It's just kind of cannabis as well, but perseverance for sure. I've definitely had a lot of things thrown at me, my mom, so, my kids grew up around cannabis, and that was just our life. And my mom didn't agree with that and actually took me to court in 2011 to try to take my kids. So they had affidavits, sent to the judge in Humboldt County saying that, we had 100 totes of weed and the kids lived on the property. I actually had to deal with CPS and I had to deal with the Humboldt County Sheriff, and, we went through court, and it wasn't legal for me to be doing what I was doing, but we did win. So, after that, I reached out to my dad. So I don't have a relationship with my mom's side of my family,
Up until that point, did you?
I did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that changed. So cannabis also had a negative impact because it changed things to a degree. Obviously,
No, but they're bad people. I don't want to be associated with them anyway.
That's true. When it's something as beautiful as this and the discovery that you've had through cannabis to kind of have that response, it's kind of like, it's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah. But I think too, after the fire, I think once you have like a total lost house fire, when you've been through some stuff and you're like, okay, you know, and then you, as an adult, you have like a total lost house fire. Yeah. And you're just, I think that's what changed it, to be honest with you. Yeah. I actually do think that the fire is what changed it. I mean, I didn't have a choice but to just kind of like, you know, get things done. I mean, I totally took over everything. Like, it was definitely the fire that made me, you know, persevere through everything after that. It was funny because a couple people, you know, would be complaining about regulations and, you know, this is 2017 and I'm going like, oh, this is cake. Like, that is nothing. Like, I just lost everything. I had a 1-year-old. We didn't have a diaper that day. You know, I mean, we lost everything. And my youngest was 1. So after that, everything was like, you know, nothing was a big deal, you know? And then the fire definitely pushed me to kind of like, you know, step up and do what I needed to do, like on the farm. So it was me out there. And I think a lot of times people ask me about like, you know, the fermented plant juices and, you know, the indigenous farming practices and everything like that. But I think what I never talk about is kind of like the hard labor that goes into it. And I think sometimes people feel like maybe a woman or maybe just me or something like that can't be the grower. Like actually a lot of times people think that I wasn't the grower.
Who did they assume that it was if it wasn't you?
And John came back in 2020, actually. In 2020, John came back, which is a huge help.
How long had he been gone prior to that?
So 2015 until 20. Yeah. So yeah. And that's when Native Humboldt was kind of built during that time. But I think it's funny, like I literally can drive like a 10K dump trailer. Like I'm like out in the hills in Humboldt, like farming. Like I made all of my beds, all of, you know, brought all of the soil out with the dump trailer, brought all the wood out, built my beds. Like they're literally not very good because I built them.
I'm sure.
But I did.
But you did it.
But I did it.
How crazy is building though? Because you said you're about an hour from everything though, right? So like,
and not only an hour, but if you saw this road or had to drive this road with a 10K dump trailer.
I'm trying to visually put it together. I'm like an hour out.
Yeah. And it's like up this crazy hill and it's all mountains and there's like some, you know, 1-lane roads at some points in time. And, you know, 10K dump trailers are really wide. But I'm literally so good at it.
You're a master of a few
I
things,
did all that stuff and I actually really like that because I think that, you know, I like to push myself too, you know, I really like to try to, you know, push myself. So
I mean, committing to cannabis, it'll develop you. I mean, because you'll find ways, like we were saying earlier, when we first started, like the easiest way for you to take on a new skill is to get the price from someone else, you know, and in your case, it's like you didn't have a choice but to rebuild after the fires. You, your family, it's your livelihood. It's all that you've worked for. So it's like it puts everything in proper perspective. Like, okay, this is all we have to fight for. Yeah. You know, so this is our why now. Yeah. You know? Yeah. For sure. So you said you walked away with only the sour diesel clones, right? Mm-hmm. What was that rebuilding process like starting with the sour diesel clones?
Rebuilding like the genetic library.
Your genetic library and just essentially your arsenal of what you had, you know, from what you lost in the fire. Mm-hmm. You know, it was just that one.
To be honest with you, the only one that really mattered was the sour diesel.
You have history with that, right? You said with your husband since what, 1999?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
1999. And yeah, the you know, the unique thing about that is that it's such an old strain and we've had it for so long and we haven't done like a tissue culture or anything, but it's still so strong. It's literally still as strong as it ever was, like as it was 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I remember a few years ago I had like a birthday cake and then I had it for a few years. And by year 3, it was so much weaker, you know, it was more pathogen, you know, susceptible to pathogens, like it just wasn't strong. it wasn't even like responding to nutrients the same way. And the sour diesel doesn't change at all.
Phase.
Like it doesn't change at all. But yeah, and there's kind of like that conversation about like legacy genetics and like the new ones.
Yeah.
But to switch into, I actually have a lot of cookies genetics right now. So practically diesel and all cookies genetics, which are amazing.
So did they have a hand in assisting you rebuild as well with some of the genetics that you received?
You know, after the fire, I went through just a few rounds.
Yeah.
You know, I was getting like clones from Organican and just, you know, different places like that and trying to build them up, but nothing really stuck.
Right. Okay.
I had the Sherbert, which I wish I wouldn't have let go, and I did. But I went through so many, and we didn't really find ones that were ones that we would want to like hold on to forever. But the diesel is definitely a strong one.
That's the survivor.
Yeah.
That's the one that lasts.
Yeah.
You mentioned the importance of growing and appreciating cannabis in its truest form. In what ways do you implement that practice at Humboldt Farms, Native Humboldt Farms?
Yes, that's one of my favorite questions, actually. So I do a lot of natural farming, and then I refer to it as indigenous, you know, farming practices as well. And so basically, you know, clearly breeding the microbes and everything like that, creating the living soil, doing that whole thing. But I take native and natural vegetation from the land surrounding the cannabis to create ferments and breed indigenous microorganisms to add to the soil. So I'm kind of like taking plants from, you know, the land or the space in which the cannabis is going to be grown. And then I'm introducing the microbes that are on those into the soil. And then, you know, I think allowing cannabis to express its truest form personally, you know, on my farm is living soil, and it's the soil biology and kind of like the soil food web. And I just know that as long as I'm breeding microbes, collecting indigenous microorganisms, adding them to the soil, the plant literally knows what it wants. So plants are super cool. Like they excrete saccharides to attract the certain microorganisms that they need. And as long as I have the foundation for them, they pick what they want, you know? And so she's in control, basically, and I'm not, you know? I'm just like, okay, cool, I'm out here. I'm going to breed all these microbes for you. Yeah. Here you go. I'm going to make sure you have everything you need and you do your thing.
Set you off right, yeah.
You know?
All you can do is just make sure it's ready to rock and roll.
Exactly. And then it does its thing, and it communicates, and it, you know, really, for me, that's how a plant expresses its truest form. And so I just try to provide my plants with the foundation and let them do their thing.
How early does your day start usually?
My day?
Yeah.
On the farm?
Yeah, on the farm. How
I
early?
mean, it depends. In the summer, it's probably 7, you know, like early. 7 to 9 or something, you know, as far as, you know, farm. And for me, it's kind of hard because I have manufacturing and I have distribution as well. So sometimes I'm doing, you know, different things. And then there's a lot of commuting in Humboldt. Everything's like an hour away from each other, you know, up a crazy dirt road and a hill. But yeah, on the farm, it's like 14-hour days, you know, depending. And like 7 to 9 or something like that. And yeah, it's super constant, super labor intensive.
I'm sorry. You said labor intensive?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, you're handling it. I mean, you're a woman out there in the field, really doing the work, you know, the heavy work for sure. This John, is he out in the fields with you usually, or is it you, or who's actually with you?
So he came back 2020, and I was probably there a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Like by this year, I'm there about half the time.
Got it. Okay.
So he's there the whole time, and then I'm there about half the time, and then half of the time I'm kind of like either in Oakland or, you know, Eureka, or doing manufacturing or something like that.
And is that where is the manufacturing located?
It's in Eureka.
In Eureka. Okay.
Yeah. In Humboldt County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So you mentioned with cookies earlier that you received some of their genetics.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about your association and your involvement with Cookies U and your Humboldt Grown initiative. Mm-hmm. Where did that begin?
So I was actually driving to LA a lot. It happened in the weirdest way. Right. And so I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, and I listen to Gary Vee. Mm-hmm. And he's like, if you have 5 extra minutes in your day and you don't have a LinkedIn account, make one. And so a couple days later, I'm like sitting down and I'm like, I have 5 minutes right here and I'm going to make a LinkedIn account. I'm going to be productive. About a week later, the district manager of Cookies actually reached out and, you know, was like, do you want to come in for an interview? We're doing this Homegrown initiative. So I went in. And then, basically what they do is they partner with farms in Humboldt. They give them all of their genetics and then we grow them.
Okay.
And they pick up about half of them at the end of the year in October, and then they co-package. They put them in Cookies bags with our logos on them as well, and a Humboldt grown sticker, and they put them in all of their stores.
They're
so cool. Yeah, I mean, I think initially it was kind of scary, you know, because it was new, and I think I even told them, I was like, I'm not sure, you know, if I want to do it, and then I just dove right in, and I decided. They were like, well, you can just do like half of your canopy, and I was like, I just dove right in. I did my entire canopy last year with Cookies cuts, and I got the cheetah piss, which I'm literally going to keep for a lifetime. It's so beautiful. It's so lovely to grow. This year I actually got I got a few, but I got the Mexican flan, and then I got the tequila sunrise. And the Mexican flan, I mean, I feel so blessed to have it. It is amazing. But yeah, I mean, that's the Humboldt Grown initiative is where my relationship started with Cookies. And then this last year, they asked if I wanted to be an instructor at Cookies U, which was literally the highlight of my whole entire year. You know, I mean, there's so much. Too. Yeah, it's a great opportunity. Crazy. Cookies is amazing. They're so supportive. Like, it's incredible. They're just good people.
Shout out to our Cookies family, FŌHSE family, and Lindsey. We say hello, but just had to send our regards. Great people, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So earlier we spoke about your children. I didn't want to skip on this. It was later in one of our topic lists.
Yeah.
But you spoke about your mom taking you to court for growing cannabis around your kids. How has that impacted your relationship with your kids, with educating them on cannabis, the existence of cannabis, your involvement with cannabis, on top of the media's coverage of cannabis? How does all of that coexist in the Renner household?
It's a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
With my 3 younger children, don't know that it like happened. But my oldest daughter was, I'm sure it's been pretty hard for her, and she hasn't said anything, so I don't necessarily want to. She's 20, so I don't want to like speak for her, but I do feel like, coming from when things legalized, I think if you had older children, I think they would kind of say, okay, well, you were doing something before. If it's just now being legalized, then that means you were, not legal before, and then with children, they have to, they have to work that out and see how they feel about that and everything. But I definitely do think that it impacted her for sure. Yeah.
What about some of your younger ones? You brought some products with this. I think this is a perfect segue to mention this one. But this book is called My Mom is a Cannabis Farmer, written by you, illustration by you as well. But how old is your youngest son?
He's 4.
He's 4, and at the time of the fire, he was 1, right? Or
no,
he was turning
that's
1.
my 8-year-old.
It was an 8-year-old, okay.
Yeah.
So you have a 4-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 20-year-old. What's the ages?
I have 5 kids.
5, okay. So update me. My numbers are wrong here. Update me. Let me catch up here.
I have a 20-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
So your hands are full between...
They're
full-time
so full.
farming, outdoor, family in the middle of nowhere, hour away from everything, making it all happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And the lady controlling the ship, wow. Well, now that I got my numbers right, 5 total.
Exactly.
She wrote a book called My Mom is a Cannabis Farmer, and it's a really, really cool kids book because it does illustrate cannabis in a great way, and that's what made me ask that question is I know that's an ever-changing journey because as children get older, come across resources between Google, the internet, social media, all these external sources that are now vehicles to communicate the same thing that at one point in time may have only been communicated by you. Yeah. I'm sure that's an ever-growing conversation. It's like, okay, not talking about it this year.
Yeah.
Next year we might have to. Obviously, as your brand grows and increases with visibility, How do you see that landscape changing? Is that something you're mentally preparing for with them as they get older, or how do you prepare for those conversations?
I'm not completely sure, but I think that, for instance, when I came home with this award,
yeah, absolutely,
which,
by the way, Cannabis Leadership Award. She's one of our recipients again. We'll get some product shots later on so you can see the actual award and put some clips here, but that's the award she was referring to.
Yeah, and so I overheard them, and they're just kind of like off playing, and then my youngest one, the youngest girl, Juniper, she had went upstairs and she's like whispering to her sister, "Did you see Mom's award? Did you see it? It's like a big crystal. It's so beautiful," and they were so proud.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good for them to get to see, because even when I got the award, I was it was a big deal, because there was years of, my life where I couldn't talk about it. So to receive an award like that
publicly is
publicly. And, the kids got to see that too. And that's important, I think. And I think, as the industry kind of moves forward and everything, and it gets more mainstream, that, kids will see that it won't be so. I mean, it's still stigmatized.
Right,
it's still stigmatized with kids.
Yeah.
But for my kids, the youngest three that are, at the farm, and see, it's just plants. It's just a plant to them. It's just like,
especially seeing you in action, seeing the work that it takes to maintain. Being indoor is one thing. It's still semi-glamorous indoor because you have all of these external things to distract you from what you're actually doing. But outdoor is more of a method where it's you and nature. 24/7 at all times. Your internal instinct. Let me just go check on them a little bit. You never leave that. That's always there. Do you feel like the work that you're doing now will positively impact their connection to Native Humboldt farms, as far as working on the grounds and farming with you as they get older? Are you hoping so? Or what are your thoughts there?
I think that, I really connect with Cultivation. I think that, they will too, but I'm like, my oldest daughter's almost 21, and I'm actually working on a non-storefront delivery in Oakland. And so she's going to be 21 in November, and that's about the time that we'll open it. And so I'm kind of just excited about Native Humboldt farms, and all of the opportunities it can create for my children as they get older and everything like that, And I think the book, which I'm so excited about.
It's great.
The book is my favorite thing, ever. And I think that, I think there's been like over 330,000 jobs created in the United States through cannabis, right? And so that's a lot of kids that their parents work in the industry, and, we're just not talking to them about cannabis, and it's everywhere, and not, it's everywhere, the recreational market. So I would really like to have those conversations.
And as we said earlier, it's up to you as a parent, and you all as parents, and us as even those that are raising, that have influence, whether godparents, uncles, the cool, the cool friend that takes care of the neighborhood kid. It's like everyone has a responsibility to educate, but also to make sure that our contributions are highlighted, because I think everything that we do is not even, I know that everything that we do, even with us here as FŌHSE, which we'll get into in a minute, everything that we do is here to advance the industry. And as we spoke about earlier, medicine is better. People are happier. The world is a better place. Of course, those that want money, they'll be richer, but we're positively impacting the industry to continue advancing it, for people to enjoy it. I want to ask this too, because we forgot to touch on FŌHSE a little bit. What was your introduction to FŌHSE? When did you hear about us, the LED technology? Was it at the awards before? What was that like?
So, I had heard of FŌHSE before the award ceremony, because you guys sponsored it. But I didn't know anything about you guys. And I actually met Kyle at the after party, and I was talking to maybe one of your guys' partners or something, indoor partners that does no-till and kind of tries to simulate what microorganisms do, and breaking down the nutrients into, smaller sizes so that they're easier to uptake for the plants. And, we kind of had this conversation for about an hour, and it really opened my eyes. I had never really even I'm so stuck on sun-grown that I'm not looking into indoor and seeing what's going on over here.
Right.
And you guys are so innovative.
Right.
Then I found out about the lights.
Right.
And then just today I found out that they actually can simulate the different times of the year with the light spectrums. And, so yeah, I mean, it was in Las Vegas for the Cannabis Business Times when I first heard of it. But I really am so glad that I did, because I think that it's really important for me to see what's going on your guys' side. And, just the little things like simulating the light spectrums in a controlled environment. That's something that I can't do for cannabis research, sun-grown,
Right.
So I love that I met you guys and I get to kind of learn about what's going on your guys' side. And
What's usually the conversation between growers that grow outdoor and then indoor? Is that usually some competition? Is it camaraderie? Is that kind of to see who can do it the best? What is that exchange like between, indoor and outdoor?
it doesn't happen, for one. There's no exchanges, but there's certainly a wall, I mean, people have definitely segregated themselves into certain groups. And I think even unconsciously, without realizing it, I may have done that too. I mean, not on purpose. I've never been like sun-grown versus indoor, but I just, it's just a different thing. So right now, yeah, it's not good. I think sun-grown really doesn't like indoor, but at the same point in time, everyone's trying to market and kind of advocate
for sure,
for their lane and everything like that. But I think it's important for both sides to kind of like work together, see if there's similarities, see if, I mean, when, I was told that possibly you could actually break down nutrients, you could simulate how indigenous microorganism would do it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like this opens up so much, and I think it's really important that the two get together and kind of talk. And yeah, I mean, clearly there's a place for sun-grown and indoor.
Clearly they're coexisting now.
Yeah, they're coexisting. And, I mean, some parts of the nation, some parts of California are good for, sun-grown, and some places don't really support it, the climate and stuff. So there's definitely spaces for both. So.
Well, I commend you for being one of the very few that to jump out of the boat and to even come and learn more and just to see what it's like on the LED side, because I think it's something to say when you keep your mind and your ears open to innovation, because even if you don't fully make the switch, you're still aware of what's going on. Yeah. Even if it's nuggets, okay, this is what they're doing on that side. Okay, how can we tighten up with Mother Nature? Not much we can do here, but what can we do with our practices to continue advancing as, those indoor? Yeah, so I commend you for that. That's great. No ego here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Good. Well, before we get out of here, I want to ask the last piece, which is, it might be kind of loaded depending on which way you take it, right? The thing that I would ask is, what do you see for the future of Native Humboldt Farms? Obviously, you're on home soil now. You know where home is. You know what your mission is in cannabis. What do you see for the future?
I mean, for one, it's hard to predict what my future looks like, because the market really is pretty unstable. But I do see, the completion of vertical integration, which literally solves all my problems as a farm. So for me, everything that I do in this space is because I want to continue to be able to have my small farm. It's so small. And so I'm about to open non-storefront delivery, which means that I can, sell through all my product, hopefully help Humboldt farmers that aren't branded. Right. Sell through some of their product.
Reaching back,
exactly. And I'll have direct to consumer. And I just think that definitely in the immediate future, regardless of how unstable the market is, as long as I am fully integrated, then I'm doing good, and I'm going to be great. So for now, it's vertical integration.
Good. Well, the best part is being a part of FŌHSE. We have endless resources. We have great relationships with some of those that specialize in vertical farming. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great thing that we'd be able to put you in contact with someone that can help you with that. I'm sure Kyle's already discussed that. But that's great to know too, because I think you also have to you always have to have your eyes set for the future.
Yeah.
Not that you want to adapt to what the changes are, but being aware so you always know where your place is key.
Yeah.
Like you have to know where you stand, where the market is, where the industry is, as you said. Like it goes up and down.
Yeah.
So who's to say what the future is? However, you're aware of your contributions.
Yeah.
And that's quality cannabis. You have a great story. You know, you represent not just your immediate family, you represent hundreds. Like it goes beyond us. And like you said earlier, it kind of confirms why you're here to do what you do.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's why it all makes sense. It never makes sense while you're in it in real time. But once you start looking back and things happen, the fire, perseverance, all these things start adding in. And it's like, okay, I didn't like that, but that's how it's supposed to be, you know, for me to be where I am. So, well, we wanted to say thank you. Thanks for coming in and chatting with us. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode. This is definitely a new one. This is really, really personal to home. This is a great story. We will post the links for Lindsey's social media in our captions. We'll make sure that we post the links for her book. You can go on Amazon. For those that want to follow you, where would they go? Let's get some links out there.
Instagram is at Native Humboldt, and then LinkedIn is Lindsey Renner.
Perfect. So again, Instagram is at Native Humboldt. LinkedIn is at Lindsey Renner. And before we get out of here, let's do a quick little view of some products that you brought us. What did you bring us on this side?
It's dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate, Jamaican blue mountain coffee. Nice. The manufacturing, you said that's in Eureka, right?
Yes.
Okay. So how often are you there?
Not very often.
Not very often.
Yeah. I mean, I'm probably manufacturing like a couple days a month or something like that. Yeah.
But it's still moving on its own and happening while you're there.
Yeah. And then we do 2 packs of pre-rolls, and then we have eighths. We have half ounces and ounces of flour, fresh flour, releasing next week.
Any cool names?
Some
of them?
Cool names.
Any cool strain names or anything like that?
Well, I mean, I'm just really excited about the cookie strains.
Yeah, cookie strains.
Yeah, I mean, Mexican flan is the ice cream cake times the animal mints, and it's bred by Sea Junkie in collaboration with Cookies.
Another FŌHSE family member. Shout out to Sea Junkie.
Yeah.
So she's in good company. Clearly, this is extended family that we didn't know about, but this is great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And honestly, the Mexican flan, I want to tell you that it produced twice as much as every other strain that I ran or that I got from Cookies. And side by side, I got 5 strains from Cookies this year. And I think only one of them is Sea Junkie. And it just crushed. It's
Mexican
so
flan.
Beautiful. Mexican flan.
Next time we're either going to have to get you like a truck when you drive back up so you can bring some goodies. We don't have to worry about you flying. We don't want any of those problems on our hands. But but again, just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for coming by and hanging with us. I know this won't be the last that you will see of Lindsey. As I said, you'll get her links. You'll get some Amazon links to buy some of her products, her book. I also have another one here, the Baca book, which is Connection Through Cannabis History and Culture, where it essentially documents some of the stories in minorities and Latinos, African Americans, and they're published in this book. So if you want to learn more about others' journey in cannabis outside of Lindsey's, this is a place to go. And again, I'll make sure these links are here. You'll see way more from Lindsey. Also, make sure you go to Cannabis Business Times and read her write-up on her leadership award that she received from us. So again, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys too.
All right, guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Been easy.